Michael Jackson was once the world's most famous pop star. Now he's world famous for being an alleged paedophile.
He loves children sincerely. No sexual anything toward children at all.
According to the boy, they would masturbate themselves in front of each other. There was frequent oral sex on the part of Michael, performing oral sex on the boy.
Jackson is facing his latest special friend in court on charges of child molesting, conspiracy, kidnapping, and extortion.
Don't treat me like a criminal, so I am innocent.
When you're innocent, you don't think anything of it. There was nothing to hide.
You know, if there's nothing wrong, why do you need to change? Because you think of me differently.
Tonight, we examine Michael Jackson's obsessive pattern of behavior with boys. And for the first time, we hear from the boys themselves.
Come on. Come on. Come on, come on.
Michael Jackson has been seen in public with little boys for nearly 25 years. But all that time, what we didn't notice was how in private, each of the superstars' friendships have followed the same obsessive pattern.
If this was the guy next door, the minute he said, "Oh, yeah, I'm sleeping with little boys around the block," he'd be tarred and feathered.
Michael Jackson is supposed to be this great crusader for children. I have never heard of an instance of a little girl being befriended with the same ardor that boys have been befriended.
It really makes me wonder if he can control his own behavior, and if he can't, well, then that's called an obsession.
It's an obsession that's led Michael to share his wealth, his home, and sometimes even his bed with literally hundreds of boys. And it began when he was little more than a kid himself.
He really didn't have, and I know that everybody knows this, he really didn't have much of a childhood.
Michael's childhood was scarred by the pressures of early stardom and the close attentions of his violent father, Joe.
Ever take any of them over your knee or use any other methods of disciplining this lively group you've got here?
He was a disciplinarian. And when I say disciplinarian, I mean if he felt you did something wrong, then of course he would spank you.
I have a way, you know.
What about Michael? If Michael always does right?
He's strict. Why do we have to do this? And we can't do that. But that's part of growing up.
But growing up was the one thing Michael Jackson wanted to avoid. And as his fame increased, so did his reluctance to join the adult world, especially when it came to women.
I've never considered Michael a heterosexual. He never talked about females. Females were never around him. I don't really think he found girls attractive.
What no one guessed was at the age of 21, Michael was already developing an unusual obsession with young boys.
When I was around about the age of 13, I was a little bit cheeky, but well, I think I was a little bit naive as well, looking back.
Terry George was 13 and a keen collector of celebrity interviews when he met Michael in Leeds. For the rest of the Jacksons, it was just another stop on their 1979 European tour. But for Michael, this was an opportunity to develop his unusual habit of befriending underage boys.
What is your name?
Michael would tour all over the world. There were little boys everywhere that would come to the hotels.
And what is your job? I'm a singer.
I didn't really mingle with other people. I didn't really have a lot of friends then.
Determined to interview his idol, Terry had found out where the Jacksons were staying. Armed with Michael's hotel room number and a tape recorder, he simply knocked on his door.
What do you like most? Things that you like?
I like kids a lot.
Wow. Certainly a lot smaller than it ever was. It's feels like it's been totally restructured. Michael said, "Who is it?" And I said, "Oh, my name's Terry. I've come to do an interview." And then he opened the door and says, "Oh," he looked a bit shocked to see me, really. He's probably looking at this level. I was down here somewhere. I came into the room and I was sat on this bed here. But the gap seemed much bigger as well because I had my tape recorder down there.
When he met Terry, Jackson took his first steps towards developing obsessive relationships with young boys. He started by swapping phone numbers.
You know, him giving me his number and asking for mine. Didn't really feel strange at all. It was great. It was a thrill. It was, you know, I was happy to be in touch with the celebrity.
But after Jackson left Britain, his behaviour did turn strange when he started calling Terry 2 or 3 times a week.
His calls came quite late at night, normally for anything from 11 in the evening, 10 in the evening, right through to 5 o'clock in the morning on some occasions.
One night, Michael made a call that Terry has never forgotten.
I had phone sex with Jacko, is what the press wrote.
According to Terry, Jackson began asking inappropriate questions, but it was only later that he understood what was being said.
These words that we use that I didn't even know the meaning of then. Cream, basically. You know, something that I at that time thought was edible. You know, and turn out now to know it's something that's used for lubrication. At that time, it didn't mean a great deal to me. It was, you know, it was innocent conversation, really.
Innocent or not, before long the frequent late-night phone calls stopped. By the time Terry was 15, the friendship was over.
Michael Jackson changes his phone numbers. He's not available on the telephone anymore.
As soon as they appear to be a little bit more into puberty or that they have gotten their first facial hair,
he just moves on to the next little special friend.
From then on, a pattern was established. When a boy reached his sell-by date, Michael found a new friend. Up till now, the 22-year-old singer's friendships with boys half his age remained secret. A gulf was opening up between Jackson's public and private personas. As Jackson stood on the brink of superstardom, there were still few outward signs of his inner turmoil.
There's 2 different Michaels. When he's on stage, he's a totally different person. You know, he's in control.
This video for Don't Stop Till You Get Enough helped launch Michael's solo career. He looks like a man who's breaking free.
And when you watch Michael, you'd like to think that he was enjoying it too. In fact, it was one of the darkest times of Michael Jackson's life.
Because despite this exuberant performance, Michael was under intense pressure to behave more like a normal pop star in his private life too.
He went through this phase in his life where he became extremely shy and totally changed. Totally changed his demeanor. He didn't want to see people, and he just became a totally different person.
But whatever kind of person Jackson was, at this point the family and the PR took over. In public, music's brightest new star was coupled up with Brooke Shields, America's most desirable young woman. But in private, Michael had fallen for the tiny child star, Emmanuel Lewis.
Regardless of how old we were in real life, we're not going to get older. That was just our frame of mind. We were Peter Pan.
The 3-foot star was invited down to the set of Jackson's new video, Thriller, and met Michael while he was having his makeup done.
And he's like, "Are you afraid of me?" You know? Of course not. You're Michael Jackson.
But other people close to the star were becoming concerned, as Michael's relationships with young boys began to intensify.
I think that the family knew that something wasn't right about it. The 2 of them were rolling around in the grass and playing games with each other.
They would do all the Thriller moves together and all. It's so cute, so adorable. Do all those little things together, and no, there were no questions about it because it was a wonderful friendship.
Whatever they claim now, at the time the family were reported to be unhappy about the 25-year-old man and his 12-year-old friend.
The family really wanted him to lead what they thought was a normal life. You know, more an adult life, and he just really wasn't interested in that.
By 1984, Michael's second album, Thriller, was well on its way to being the best seller of all time. Now he was nominated for 12 Grammy Awards and was all set to be crowned King of Pop. But choosing his date for the ceremony, Jackson faced a crisis. It was the biggest night of his life, and his family wanted to see a girl on his arm.
I recall Brooke being over to the house and asking Michael if she could go with him to the awards.
Michael was, you know, a little bit lukewarm on that. He liked her, but he liked Emmanuel better.
He didn't want to say no, so he had 2 dates.
Before this high-profile double date, no one knew about Michael Jackson's boys. But here, just before he swept the board at the Grammys, he's seen arriving at the ceremony with Brooke on one arm and Emmanuel on the other.
I didn't know the magnitude of how great this month was going to be in history. You know, you just didn't know.
The extraordinary spectacle was filmed for Jackson's personal home movie collection, as well as the TV cameras.
You can imagine the surprise and shock that everybody felt that Michael Jackson and Brooke Shields were a couple with Emmanuel Lewis.
He basically had Brooke Shields there as his date, but he had Emmanuel, you know, sort of in his arms.
One look at this threesome, and people became suspicious about Jackson's relationships with girls.
Brooke Shields was never Michael Jackson's girlfriend. It was all staged. That's the way it is in Hollywood, you know.
Now, everyone wanted to know why Michael Jackson was hanging around with a boy less than half his age. But according to Emmanuel, this was just a normal friendship.
I mean, all we did was watch, you know, comedy or cartoons. Could anything negative happen between the two of us? The answer to that question, your question, is hell no.
When Emmanuel Lewis suddenly started showing up in public with Michael Jackson, that was as if the water had burst over the dam. After that, the pattern began that we always saw Michael with a young male friend at his side, almost always.
People were starting to ask serious questions about what the King of Pop was doing with all these little boys. And as each new friendship grew more intense than the last, the troubled star's strange behavior accelerated.
I remember him stating that he felt as though he was the loneliest person in the world.
Isn't this a thriller?
Jackson was now a megastar, attracting plaudits from presidents as well as little boys.
I'm very, very honored. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
At first, his obsession with boys looked like one more eccentricity from a man who was becoming famous for being odd.
There's always been so many eccentric things going on around Michael Jackson that almost lost in the background were these little boys that were always there.
But people took notice when Jackson began splashing cash on extravagant gifts for his next special friend, and began asking questions about his escalating obsession with boys. One of the first boys to profit from Michael's newfound wealth was the son of a Californian garbage man, 10-year-old Jimmy Safechuck. The young actor was picked by Jackson to star in this glossy advert, designed specifically to appeal to kids, in which Michael's image became indelibly linked to children, and Jimmy appeared as his clone.
Well, the interesting thing about Jimmy Safechuck is that he was actually the first mini Michael.
Jackson was so enchanted by his new mini-me, he took Jimmy on the road to tour his next album, Bad, and even dressed the boy and himself in identical outfits.
I don't know whose idea it was to start dressing these boys like Michael.
Looking like Michael soon became a part of the pattern for Jackson's boys.
You know, the glove, the spin,
the little coats, the fedora hats,
the pants that were too short, and the sequin socks.
It starts to make you wonder who's making them dress that way. Do they want to dress that way, or does Michael insist that they dress that way?
Whoever's idea it was, according to people close to the Jacksons, for Michael's parents, alarm bells had started to ring.
The whole family, even Joseph, they didn't like it. They didn't think it was right. This little kid, Jimmy, being all of a sudden included to the tour, Mrs. Jackson just expressed that she didn't like it one bit. She didn't like the way it looked.
Apparently, Mrs. Jackson became even more concerned when Michael began showering the 10-year-old with more than just attention.
He had taken the boys shopping to a shopping spree to F.L. Schwartz and had bought the family a Rolls Royce.
The family was aghast. You buy them a little outfit to wear. You take them on a trip. That's fine. But you buy them a house? You buy them 2 luxury automobiles?
When you put enough out there, it looks a certain way. However, at the same time, when you're innocent, you don't think anything of it. It's just a gift, and it's like, enjoy it, have fun.
But despite others' concerns, from now on, giving extravagant gifts became an essential part of how Michael made friends with boys. Jimmy and his parents were just the first of many who would benefit from being close to Jackson.
I saw the Safechucks lifestyle change. I read their credit report. I saw what they did for a living before Michael Jackson came into their life. Then I saw the way they were living afterward. And it wasn't just this child appearing in one video with Michael Jackson that gave them all that money.
At first, 10-year-old Jimmy enjoyed unprecedented access to the star's assets. But just like all the previous boys in Michael's life, his days as the favorite were numbered. After Jimmy hit puberty, he went to visit his old friend Michael. But the star didn't even bother to turn up.
Set up the table like Michael is going to be there, you know, at dinner. And we did that for the whole weekend, but she said between you and I...
Yeah, he was not coming, yeah.
He was not coming.
Yeah, he was in Los Angeles.
Just don't tell them that he's not coming, that's all.
That's all, yeah.
Jimmy Safechuck, like so many others that I have come across, just simply got too old.
Too old.
Too old.
In private, Michael had already moved on to his next special friend. But for his record-buying public, he was determined to portray himself as a heterosexual predator. With the video for his latest hit, The Way You Make Me Feel.
The feeling and the mood was just kind of sexy. I think with me strutting in this tight dress and, you know, Michael chasing after me. That was the first video where the public saw Michael for the first time as a believable heterosexual male.
He actually looks, you know, hot and sexy and sexual, and there's a chemistry between him and Tatiana.
But in fact, this chemistry was all just part of Michael's act. In private, it was little boys, not girls, who were the center of the 29-year-old's world. But being best friends was no longer enough. Increasingly alienated from his own mother and father, Michael began to develop a crucial new part of his behavior pattern with his boys.
The boys are too young not to have some family member present, so Michael has to take on the whole family one way or another, and the way he does it is to just make them feel that he just adores them and loves them all.
Now Michael began infiltrating the homes of his young friends and winning the trust of the whole family.
He adopted my family. He started becoming more and more attached to my family as a whole rather than just me individually. This is the first letter that I ever got from him.
Damien was 9 when he sent Jackson a poem, and the star soon started calling and writing.
Hi, how's my best little friend in the whole world doing?
Eventually, Michael asked his new best friend to come and meet him at his secret hideout in the LA business district of Century City.
My parents dropped me off at his, his like assistant's house. And so, we went in the car and drove to the secret spot. I would get butterflies in my stomach. I mean, it was unbelievable. We parked down here, and then there's an entrance there where it enables you to go up to the room there. And so that's what we did.
After this first visit, Damien's relationship with Michael became closer. But now, just being friends with a boy wasn't enough for Jackson. He wanted to become part of the family.
We opened up our family to him, and he was kind of another member of the family. He got to experience what a family atmosphere was about. And I think that isn't something that he ever had himself.
One of the most famous men in the world was soon regularly driving out to Orange County to stay in Damien's spare room.
He would arrive around 6 o'clock. The lights would all be dimmed or off. Then we'd put on a video or two and watch the video of him. You'd be surprised at how much Michael Jackson stuff Michael was actually interested in watching.
Even for a huge fan of Michael Jackson, his demands began to get tiresome.
I mean, our whole family catered to him. If he wanted to go to bed, well, Michael needs to go to bed. He had his breathing exercises. You know, he has to take a certain pill at a certain time. You know, and it just, I mean, the whole thing, it was the Michael Jackson show.
Hello. What have you been doing all day?
The Michael Jackson show got even more demanding when the star began calling Damien's mother day and night to offload about his traumatic childhood.
He needed someone to confide in.
The lies I had to tell. We're supposed to be the perfect family. The Jackson family, they lived in a ghetto in Gary, Indiana, and they made it. And they're so tight-knit, my ass.
My dad would be waiting for my mom in bed, for her to come to bed, and she would never come. You know, she would be speaking with him in depths on the phone, you know, late hours of the night.
When Michael started calling 3 or 4 times a day, Damien's father became suspicious and decided to tape his telephone conversations.
I would come home, we would come home from sessions and we didn't do something right, and we would get beat with a sack full of wet sand because it didn't leave bruises. Got to smile and everything fine. Y'all so tight.
It was extraordinary and flattering that a star of Michael's rank would pick such an everyday family to confide his secrets to. But then Jackson suddenly stopped ringing.
And so we kind of waited on the phone call, and it just never came. You know, it was difficult to accept that.
One minute, Damien and his family were Michael's best friends. The next, they were sidelined as Jackson moved on to his next little boy. In 1987, Jackson was the world's most popular entertainer. His personal wealth was estimated at $100 million. But the 29-year-old superstar was still living at home with his parents. Finally, he decided to buy a place of his own. And as usual, Michael did nothing by halves.
He wanted to put the whole Disney thing in our house, and my mother wouldn't let him, so he says, I'm going to buy this property, I'm going to do it what I want to do.
By creating Neverland, Michael was able to live his fantasy of being Peter Pan.
He was no longer under the supervision of his parents and this sort of watchful eye of his brothers and sisters.
And he was able to attract children to his home.
Now that Michael could entertain his young boys in private, the next boy in his life didn't just share his home and wealth, he even shared his bed. When Michael saw the movie Home Alone at Christmas 1990, he asked his housekeeper to contact its young star, Macaulay Culkin.
Kevin!
Home Alone.
Michael saw the movie and he asked Norma to have him brought over and spend some time at the ranch.
Everyone at Neverland could see Michael was smitten by the 10-year-old child star, his most high-profile boy to date.
Why you like Macaulay? Why? The kid is cute.
The kid was cute at the time.
Yeah.
Very, very cute, yeah.
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 Michael Jackson marveled. Look at the pouty smile. Look at those lips. He always pointed to people, look at his lips. I love the pouty smile.
Michael gave Macaulay the run of his new home.
They had food fights and, you know, and a lot of, you know, great fun.
And yet again, Michael followed his pattern of obsessively filming his new best friend, shown here playing together as if they were both little children.
There are video games, there are animals, there are trains.
They play with all day long and they will go watch movies.
Anything and everything you want, and it's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And the fun didn't stop at bedtime. From now on, Michael couldn't bear to be parted from his young friends, day or night.
One morning, Macaulay's mom came and asked where Macaulay, where is Macaulay? Where is Macaulay? He's not in his bedroom. Oh, he's sleeping with Michael. He's in Michael's bedroom. What? What? She said, what? He's sleeping with Michael. She was really, really mad. That same day, we saw them coming out from the bedroom. I told you, remember? I said, look, oh, something is wrong there.
But according to Macaulay, nothing improper ever took place. From now on, it became normal for Michael's young friends to share his bedroom. And for the moment, their parents were happy to let them.
Since he's Michael, he has the right of doing anything, you know. A lot of people think that, you know, in this country. It's not what I think, but a lot of people will think that.
Because it's Michael Jackson and he's a celebrity, people's judgment seems to fly out the window, particularly these parents.
People have money, lots of money. They have the right to do absolutely everything.
Up till now, despite raised eyebrows from his family, no one publicly had questioned Jackson's relationships with boys. But he was about to meet the boy who'd change his fate.
And there was one question, only one question the father asked him. Did Michael Jackson touch your penis? That was the question he wanted an answer to.
By 1993, Jackson's career had gone stratospheric. At the age of just 35, he was now one of the richest, most powerful men on the planet. At the height of his fame, he gave his first interview for 14 years to America's chat show queen, Oprah Winfrey. 90 million tuned in, and on the face of it, the film appeared revealing.
Are you a virgin? How could you ask me that question? I just want to know. I want to know. I'm a gentleman. You're a gentleman. I'm a gentleman. So I'm a gentleman.
But if Michael seemed candid, there was a secret side to life at Neverland. His escalating obsession with young boys had set him on a collision course. And Michael's next special friend would bring the megastar to his knees in full public view.
Geordie told his psychiatrist that when the psychiatrist asked him what was the worst thing that's ever happened to you in your life, and he said meeting Michael Jackson.
Ray Chandler is the one close member of Geordie Chandler's family who hasn't been gagged by Jackson, following Geordie's claims of sexual abuse.
Geordie Chandler and his family was inevitable in Michael Jackson's life, in the sense that it had to happen. Eventually, it was going to happen.
12-year-old Geordie Chandler came from a broken home, and like many of Michael's previous friends, was unusually good-looking.
Very smooth skin, very fine, smooth features.
You would pass him in the street and you would have to stop and look at him. He was so beautiful.
To begin with, there was nothing remarkable about the friendship. Michael exchanged numbers with Geordie, and as usual began calling the boy.
And who would have believed in 1992 that a phone call from Michael Jackson to your child could be dangerous in any way?
If anything, Geordie's mother, June, appeared to accept the growing friendship and joined her son and the star on an all-expenses trip to Las Vegas. Here, just as in the previous relationships, the sleepovers began.
Michael rented the very, very scary movie, The Exorcist, which obviously frightened Geordie.
Geordie said that he was very frightened by the film, and then that night, according to Geordie, he and Michael spent the night together in bed together.
Nothing physical about it. But it was the first time he actually slept in the same bed with Michael Jackson.
When Geordie's mother found out her son had slept in Jackson's bedroom, she challenged the star.
She was very upset and said, "Don't let this happen again." Then Michael started to cry and said, "Why don't you trust me? Why don't you trust me?"
Geordie would later tell his psychiatrist in tape-recorded sessions that his mother, June, decided Michael wasn't a threat.
Got my mom feeling so guilty that she just broke down in tears and said, "Okay,
From that point on, she didn't protest any longer. The very next day, he handed her a very expensive gift. So there was this sort of idea that you would get nice things if only you would agree with what Michael wanted you to agree with.
So from that point on, I was in bed, children in the village.
Up to this moment, Michael's behavior had followed a familiar pattern. He'd got close to Geordie and his mother, won their trust, and shared his bed with the boy. But Michael was about to step up the intimacy as never before. Now the world's most famous pop star actually moved in with an ordinary family.
Michael spent 30 straight nights in a row in Geordie's house, in Geordie's bedroom, sleeping in the same bed with Geordie, and somehow this didn't seem to be anything alarming to his parents.
Michael's chauffeur would drop Michael off at the house at night and pick him up in the morning.
After Geordie got home from school, Michael would go back and spend yet another night.
They'd have dinner, they'd watch TV, they'd play video games, they'd do homework.
It's such a bizarre, odd thing to think that this man who has millions and millions and millions of dollars would want to bunk with a young boy.
Yeah, they were, you know, just a regular family. I mean, regular is probably not the right word.
And according to what Geordie would claim later, the relationship was about to become anything but regular. In spring 1993, Michael took Geordie and his family to Monaco as VIP guests at the World Music Awards. These clips were specially shot for the ceremony. Onlookers were shocked to see Geordie on Michael's lap. Yet the star was aware of being filmed and didn't look like a man with anything to hide. But if Geordie Chandler is telling the truth, behind the scenes there was already a new and secret side to their relationship. Later, in his statements to police and social workers, Geordie would claim it was now that things turned sexual.
Geordie claimed in his allegations that it was in Monaco that the relationship between him and Michael really began to intensify.
He and Michael had a cold. They both took ill while they were staying in a suite in Monaco. Geordie's mom and sister went off shopping. According to Geordie, they got undressed in front of each other. They saw each other naked. Geordie said that they took a bath together. And the masturbation began. They locked together in that suite in Monaco for 2 days. Things really escalated seriously at that point.
Geordie's mother said later she saw no change in her son. But there was one adult in the boy's life who did start questioning the relationship. Geordie didn't see much of his father, Evan Chandler, but when his dad discovered his 12-year-old son was sharing his bed with a 35-year-old man, he wanted to know more. Evan confronted his son.
And there was one question, only one question the father asked. Did Michael Jackson touch your penis? She just said yes. Yes, you know, he did touch my penis.
During his psychiatry sessions, Geordie would make even more detailed and graphic allegations.
And one time he was masturbating. Instead of masturbating with his mouth. And like if I didn't do it, then I didn't love him as much anymore.
According to Geordie, they would masturbate themselves in front of each other. There was Michael would masturbate Geordie frequently. There was frequent oral sex on the part of Michael performing oral sex on the boy.
2 days after Geordie's first damning accusations, it was announced to the world that the star who called himself Peter Pan was now accused of being a pervert.
Officers armed with search warrants raided Jackson's ranch north of Santa Barbara. Entertainer Michael Jackson is the subject of a criminal investigation, using to say whether Jackson is a suspect or a victim.
You go into Mr. Jackson's bedroom. It's a very large room, a lot of stuffed animals, a lot of things that would be attractive to children. It wasn't a surprise because I went through many people's homes and found the same type of items, although on a lesser scale. One item that we found in a locked filing cabinet was a book showing nude boys in nude poses. It's not illegal. It's a book that I've seized in other investigations. If it's a person who has this material, who has a sexual interest in children, it becomes child erotica.
As more damaging details emerged, it was a testing time for Jackson. But he hadn't seen anything yet.
It was December 20th, 1993, and the police came knocking at the door of Neverland with a warrant to photograph Michael Jackson's private parts.
Geordie had drawn and described distinctive markings on Jackson's genitals.
Based upon what the boy has said, we obtained a search warrant, not only for Jackson's residences, but also for Jackson himself.
They wanted to match up the boy's rendition to what the reality was.
They served a search warrant on me which allowed them to view and photograph my body, including my penis.
Your front private parts, your back private parts, your side private parts.
It was the most humiliating ordeal of my life.
The most telling mark occurred when Michael Jackson actually lifted his penis, as if in an aroused state.
When things get aroused, you see the other side, and those were the descriptions that he gave.
I ask all of you to wait and hear the truth before you label or condemn me. Don't treat me like a criminal, because I am innocent.
The results of this unique photographic session were a final body blow for Jackson.
We corroborated what the boy has said, and we were able to corroborate that through the photograph of Mr. Jackson.
Did it prove that he had actually engaged in sexual molestation of this boy? No. Absent another adult eyewitness, what would have?
Once he heard the evidence, Michael decided to end the ordeal. He paid Geordie Chandler and his family a massive settlement reported to be $25 million in exchange for their silence. They could never discuss their relationship with Jackson in public again.
The resolution of this case is in no way an admission of guilt by Michael Jackson.
You pay someone $25 million. That's a lot of money, especially if you're innocent.
I mean, this was nothing to Michael Jackson in terms of his finances, but it was everything in terms of his life, because it gave him a chance to, you know, start anew and make some decisions.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Michael Jackson and Miss Lisa Presley Jackson, I don't speak...
The first decision Michael made post-Geordie was to get married. Just 4 months after he paid millions to the boy who accused him of being a paedophile, he made Elvis's daughter, Lisa Marie, his wife. But that wasn't the end of Michael Jackson's boys. The appearance of the next boy in Michael's life showed it would take more than a child molestation rap to end the superstar's obsession with young male friends.
We've been through a lot together. Definitely have.
At the height of the Geordie Chandler scandal, 13-year-old Frank Cascio became the new boy in Michael's life, much to the shock of the police.
He was traveling with two boys, brothers from New Jersey. We were concerned for the children's safety. We contacted the parents of the children who believed that Jackson did not do anything improper.
He loves children sincerely. No sexual anything toward children at all. I really think it's just been blown out of proportion.
Michael had got to know Frank as a baby when he used to stay at the hotel the boy's father managed in Manhattan.
Everyone was looking at him with a cocked eye after 1993, and he continued the same behavior, the same patterns with other boys.
When you're innocent and you're doing everything that is perfectly normal and right, I'm not going to deviate from that. What am I doing that's wrong?
Jackson refused to change his behavior. He was a 35-year-old married man, but he still saw nothing wrong with boys sleeping in his room, against his wife's wishes.
After the Geordie Chandler incident, she felt that he should never be around boys ever again, ever. So she was adamant about that, and he was just as adamant that she doesn't get to tell him what to do.
Somewhat inevitably, less than a year after their wedding, the couple split. But even if Lisa Marie didn't make it till death us do part, Frank remains close to the star.
He's somebody that Michael trusts, and he's decided to make his life with Michael Jackson.
Now, I've known this man for probably 20 years now. He is a part of me.
As part of the Jackson camp, Frank will be seeing his old friend Michael in court. But he's not the only one supporting his idol as Jackson faces fresh charges of child molestation. Despite his being accused for a second time, there are still parents who are willing to have their children sleeping over with the star.
When I slept on his lap, he wasn't like touching me on the parts. It was like I was just sleeping on him, and he was just hugging me, doing nothing to me.
Jackson first survived paedophile accusations a decade ago. They cost the star far more than the $25 million payout. Since 1993, his personal fortune has halved, and record sales have plummeted. Michael has become a father, claiming that these blonde, blue-eyed children are his. The one thing that hasn't changed is Jackson's pattern of behavior with underage boys. Despite mounting criticism, Michael can't survive without other people's boys in his life and in his bed.
If this was the guy next door, the minute he said, "Oh, I'm sleeping with little boys around the block," he'd be tarred and feathered.
But Michael Jackson isn't the guy next door. He's a 46-year-old superstar who still has boys sleeping over.
When I slept on his lap, he wasn't like touching me on the parts. I was just sleeping on him, and he was just hugging me, doing nothing to me.
9-year-old Juju met Jackson the summer before last and spent the night at Neverland.
He's like the most best person I ever met because it's like he'll buy you anything you want, anything. He'll buy you a car, buy you a house.
Juju's family have known Jackson for 9 years, since his older brother Ahmed first became one of Michael's special friends.
When I asked my parents if we could spend the night, they were like, yeah, sure, and they just let us. They know he's not child molester, all that stuff is crap.
I never felt any weird thing about him. I will never believe what they say.
When I told my friends, they were like surprised, but they thought he was gay, but he really wasn't. So I told them. So I told them I'm not gonna be your friend no more if you keep saying that.
It's hard to imagine what would stop some people wanting to be friends with a megastar. Now, even the current accusations against Jackson have done nothing to shake this family's faith in him.
I know he's been accused 2 times already, but I never believed it. And I trust Michael. We're always gonna be beside him.
But by 2002, Peter Pan seemed to be losing his magic touch. With his career on a downward spiral, Jackson must have been flattered when the British journalist Martin Bashir offered him the starring role in his own documentary. Behind the scenes, Michael Jackson's behavior with boys may have been escalating for nearly 25 years, but he didn't even try to hide the truth when he introduced his latest special friend to the cameras.
Piercing eyes, $1 million smile. He fits the Michael Jackson pattern.
13-year-old Gavin Arvizo stunned the world by exposing how the star was still openly sharing his bed with boys.
And then he finally said, okay, if you love me, you sleep on the bed. I was like, oh, man.
When I heard those words, if you love me, it sent chills down my spine because those are classic pedophile words. If you love me, you will do this.
Psychiatrist Carol Lieberman was so alarmed by what she claims are clear signs of abuse that she instigated a complaint to the authorities, the catalyst for the current case against Jackson.
Gavin is leaning against Michael's shoulder, looking up with these puppy dog eyes. He's just so submissive to Michael. You can tell how much control Michael has over him.
Why can't you share your bed? But the most loving thing to do is to share your bed with someone.
What outraged everyone was hearing Jackson trying to justify the same behavior that led to the multi-million-pound payout in 1994.
It's all pure and innocent. Cookies and milk. Come on. Nobody bought it.
All I remember is the sinking feeling in my gut that this is going to be trouble.
Jackson had met Gavin Arvizo 3 years earlier when the boy was in hospital with cancer.
The TV in the room was on, and Michael Jackson was on. And he looked up, he said, "Can I meet Michael Jackson?" I said, "Yes, you could do that."
When Gavin first met Jackson, he'd been given just a couple of weeks to live.
He had a 18-pound tumor in his stomach, and they'd had to take one of his kidneys out, spleen out, and the cancer was spreading all over his lung and liver.
Miraculously, after meeting Jackson, the boy recovered. Less miraculously, given Jackson's pattern of behavior, Gavin ended up in the star's bed.
This boy fit every one of the patterns of behavior. He wanted to meet Michael Jackson in the worst way. He gave him his phone number. He got those late-night phone calls. He ultimately got that invitation to Neverland. He and his family went to Neverland, and they were wowed.
What's extraordinary is that a film with seemingly happy and relaxed-looking images of Jackson with Gavin and his family ended in the star being accused of being a paedophile for a second time.
Michael Jackson has been able to do this for decades, and now they're finally beginning to question it.
And now the law's been changed to prevent an out-of-court settlement. So this time Jackson can't prevent a court appearance.
Counts of 288A in violation of the California Penal Code, commonly known as child molestation.
As well as child molesting, Jackson's also been accused of conspiracy, kidnapping, and extortion.
The kid, he said that because so he get like billions and billions of dollars from him to for his family. So if he didn't say that, he's still gonna get the money. He just has to be patient.
For 25 years, people have been wondering what drives Michael Jackson's obsessive behavior with boys.
People really willingly don't want to believe that this middle-aged man preys upon young boys.
I know this man very well, probably one of the, better than anybody. And I know that he doesn't have this in him. He's not like this.
Now it will be up to a jury to decide the truth about Michael Jackson and his boys.
Finally, a court of law gets to decide about Michael Jackson.
In my heart, I truly believe that he will be vindicated. But I don't want to see it happen again.
Find out what to do if you suspect a child needs help dealing with a difficult situation at channel4.com/health. Next tonight, the first ever episode of 6 Feet Under, a double bill on the way.